Welcome to Charts Today. It is Thursday, the 13th of August, and I start by looking at a weekly chart of SpaceX, up 9% yesterday, 9.6% yesterday, so quite a big move. And you just say, well, a weekly chart, what use is that? Well, the key thing was that big weekly engulfing candle last week. Now, we don't have a lot of data here, of course, and that's one of the problems with IPOs, so you have to go to shorter term charts. So this is a daily chart. And again, not much data. The cloud, the Ichimoku cloud, is building, but really we still have a lot of data needed to get a clear picture on the cloud. So, but the interesting thing is, again, we've got bullish engulfing candles, one there, one there, one there. So we saw a lot of bullishness around this 110 level, where the market was prepared to come in and buy the stock. So quite interesting. It's very hard to make a long-term call because we don't have long-term data, but interesting that we're seeing that in the daily chart. And of course, then if we go to the 60-minute chart, we start to see the picture a little bit more clearly. So really quite key. The targets there move higher, consolidation, a break higher. So that's really quite key. So we are seeing a recovery going on short term for sure, and that is just one to watch. There'll be a lot of SpaceX investors relieved that they are back. We're at 150 was the resistance level. Remember, that was the launch price. The IPO price was 135. So there'll be people relieved to be back where they started, which in itself might create some selling pressure because people, when they are keen to get their money back, often do take the profit. Interestingly, that 150 level was the level that we saw on SpaceX. So you can see there that was support that potentially now could become resistance. So quite an interesting situation. We'll come back and look at tech stocks generally, but let's have a quick look at the market. The Japanese yen, still one to watch. The dollar is just running sideways at the moment on that short-term chart. If we look at the longer-term chart, again, it's a big sideways move, and we have to wait, really. One currency that is quite interesting, though, to watch is the Chinese yuan, and this has been a really steady trend down. And if we look at the long-term chart, the weekly chart, you can see that that is making now just getting towards 3.5-year lows. So really significant. That was dollar strength, dollar weakness in terms of the yuan. So that is certainly one to keep an eye on. And we have seen some other currencies like South African rand. That has had a general improvement, got up as nearly 20 rand to the dollar. Now it's sitting at around 16 rand to the dollar. So we have seen an improvement there. If we look at the medium-term chart, that was last year we saw quite a big move in the rand, and that's just breaking lower again. So after many years of underperforming, the rand is actually doing quite well. So looking at the other markets, we look at Bitcoin first of all. This continues to look bearish on the medium-term chart. The short-term chart, we do have a downside target, so that's quite key there as well. So we're bearish, bearish, bearish. And of course, if we look at this, the weekly chart, we do have a downside target to 36,000. If we break to new lows, that's where we would look to. The looking at the US market, the Nasdaq is still waiting to see if we can activate this upside target. So really just August's been a quiet month generally for markets. Looking at the S&P future, we've been running sideways for most of this month. We have got a downside target not yet activated. The Nasdaq, similarly, we've just hit the buffers there, so quite interesting. We're seeing most markets quiet today. The UK market down 10%, down 0.1%. The DAX in Germany actually up a third. That's looking quite strong. Just waiting to see if we can break. And interestingly, Japan actually did break quite significantly there. That's the short-term chart. The medium-term breaking to a new high. And that's a new all-time high. So really significant there that we are seeing that. That's the weaker yen driving that. Of course, Japanese earnings been quite strong. Asia generally, though, was lower. We saw Shanghai lower. The Sensex in India just struggling to activate that new upside target, so that's quite key. And the Aussie market was down 0.25% as well, even though we do have a new upside target there. Crude oil, $90 for Brent crude was just a move too far. So we put our energy report out to clients this morning. Refined products still looking pretty bullish, and European gas has paused. 62 is the level on TTF that we need to watch. Looking at some of the other products, we were certainly looking at heating oil. You're seeing here, that's just these the refined products. Gold, we talked about gold yesterday. New upside target, that was yesterday an unactivated one, so it did actually activate. We pulled back a little bit today, but we have upside targets on the short-term chart. The medium-term chart clearly found support at 4,000. Silver down nearly 1% this morning, but again, if we look at the short-term, here we do have a downside target, so this cloud trend may well break. Keep an eye on that. Looking at the tech majors, mostly lower yesterday. Apple down 1%. Amazon were lower as well. So all of these stocks just really struggling. And if we look at the semiconductor index, it's the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, that is still looking quite weak. We had a recovery in there. These were the downside targets which were met. We've got an upside target, but on the whole, this is still looking like a bit of a pullback. We've got an upside target yet to be activated. So across the board, tech chip stocks still looking a little bit weak. Microsoft gave up some of its gains, you can see there, but is still bullish above the cloud. We've got work to do to get to a new high. Nvidia was the only stock really that bucked the trend yesterday, and that did actually activate a new upside target. So that is quite key for Nvidia, but we need to break that 240 level really to run higher. And Tesla was down 1.5%. Looking at the Dow 30, Nvidia was the top performer. Home Depot was the weakest. And you can see here, this is just a struggle recovery for the downside there, so that's quite key. And then we look at the NASDAQ. SpaceX was the best performer. Micron, this has been a star performer over the last year or so. But you can see here it has really given up some from 1250. It pulled all the way back to 735. Just shows how big some of these retracements can be for stocks that are in long-term uptrends. So the long term is off the chart, but that's really quite key there as well. So that's it for today. Keep an eye on those markets. Another hot day in the UK and Europe. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.